Last time you saw me use this forklift, it lost forward and reverse right at the beginning of the job. I had to take the body off that half track just using this for lift and using something else to tow it around. Not the most convenient thing. So in this video, I'm going to try to get this back driving again, going both forward and backwards, and still spending as little money as possible. Why don't you come along for the ride? Now the transmission in this forklift is hydraulically operated. It's similar to an automatic transmission in a car. It's got a torque converter, and then it's got clutches to engage the different gears. In this case, it's a 2-speed transmission, high and low, and then forward and reverse. And those are independent, so you can have high and low, both backwards and forward. So basically the principle is a pump pumps hydraulic fluid, that closes the clutches and holds them locked down, and that engages your wheels. And the torque converter sloshes fluid around like a big fan and squishes you forward. So how hard can it be?
Now what I have here is a diagram of all the fluid flowing through this whole transmission. We start off here with fluid in the bottom of the case of the transmission, and it goes this way. And it goes through a pump. It goes through a whole bunch of valves for pressure regulation. These are all automatic valves. This one here is one you can operate with a pedal to reduce the flow when you want to go slow, called an inching pedal or inching valve. This one right here is the one that makes us go forward and backwards, and that's the one that gets the reduced pressure. Then we have the valve here that's low and high, so you can change whether you're in low or high gear with these clutches. Then we have a pressure relief valve, heat exchanger, filter, another relief valve, torque converter, and then back to one of the regulating valves. So that's the system we're working with.
There's an access panel here, disconnected the throttle pedal and the few bolts that hold it on. At least I think I got all the bolts. Yeah, there. Get this out of the way. And now we can get to the actual transmission. Now, unlike a car, these things are all bolted together as a unit. So we have, there's the engine. You can actually see the torque converter right there. Real easy access. Then we have the transmission right here, and that's the front axle. And the whole thing's bolted together as one unit, which means you can't take the transmission out without removing the front axle or the motor. And the book recommends taking the front axle out as the easy option. I hope to avoid that. And it looks like this is the transmission filter. I talked to the previous owner. He had the same problem where it wouldn't move. He replaced the filter and then the fluid, and then it drove.
Now the filter is right here, and that's at the end of the system. And also I noticed there's a relief valve here, so if that filter gets clogged, the fluid just bypasses it. But I'm not going to buy a filter because I don't think that's causing my problem.
Now these are the controls for the transmission. One is forward and reverse, and one is low and high. I don't know which is which. They're in a tube system that seized together years ago. So you can't move them independently at all. So you're shifting both of them at the same time. There is forward and reverse, which is this one that's hooked up. There's also high and low, which is not hooked up. Forward and reverse was the key thing. You can manually shift it between high and low right now. Now these control that valve body back there. And that is what determines where the fluid goes in this transmission to actually make the clutches grab. Which means we need to make sure that is producing pressure to the clutches, and so we can see if it's the clutches that are slipping or they're just not getting pressurized. Now I've got the manual here that shows all the ports and the pressures. Everything's supposed to be in the 100 psi range. And I've got a gauge here where it's got a green section from 80 to 120. So this will be easy to see. If that needle's somewhere in the green, we're probably okay. Now, even though the problem I'm having with this forklift is it won't move, I went ahead and blocked off the tire, and just in case by some miracle something decides to engage. But I'm not too hopeful on that. Maybe I should have left them off. Maybe that'll fix it. then it'll start driving away. Yeah, well, I don't feel like getting run over today.
Now, according to the diagram, the easiest ones to get to are these right here. The pressure going to the forward and reverse clutches.
Let's see what we get here. We're gonna get no pressure at all on either gauge. Think we have a fluid pressure issue. Now, the fact that we have absolutely no pressure whatsoever is a good thing, because if it was full pressure and it didn't drive, that meant the clutches are shot, and those are expensive and hard to get to. If it had partial pressure but not enough to make it move, it probably means that it's worn out and needs to be rebuilt and just needs to make more pressure to drive. The fact that we have no pressure whatsoever means that we probably have a clog somewhere or something's not flowing. It's probably something we can fix pretty cheap, because all we have to do is find the clog and clear it. Now, according to the exploded diagram, there is some kind of screen in the back of this transmission. If this is a pickup screen, this might be preventing the oil pump from even picking up the oil, and this might be the cause of all our problems. Alright, got a pan, hopefully under most of it. I don't even know how this thing actually comes out, but there are bolts. Oh, there, we're moving. Alright, it's moving out. Maybe I can put this pan under a little better. And now it hits a cross member. So you can't actually take this out. Supposed to go up with it, maybe? There's no way they'd have something you'd have to remove the cross member in order to get the filter out, is there? Seriously? How are you supposed to remove that? If that's really design, that is terrible. And now, it looks like this cross member doesn't do anything useful whatsoever. So, I'm just going to remove one side, not the other. And hopefully I can put a jack under it and lift it up enough to flex it out of the way. And I can get my filter out. I think we're getting it. I'm going to end up dropping this thing in the pan, aren't I? Nope, maybe not. Well, this is what we got. So let's look at it in the daylight. And this is what the intake screen looks like. I'm suspecting it is possible that that was somewhat restricting the flow. There's a few chunks of stuff in here. I don't see any clutch material though, like at least not a whole lot. Not big chunks like I'd expect if this was completely, if the clutches were destroyed, I'd expect to see more clutch material in it. I have a feeling we get fluid pressure, we might be back in business. There's a bolt at the end. Looks like I might be able to just unbolt this off the end here. There we go. Sleeve, long bolt. And there is our filter. Here's a handy container solvent. Let's see what happens. We'll just let that soak for a little bit. Remember when I said it's a good thing this transmission filter doesn't look like it has a bunch of clutch fiber pieces in it? I misspoke slightly. What I meant was it's completely clogged with clutch fiber pieces. Just lots of little ones. Now I'm actually encouraged by that because the problem I had was really a catastrophic failure where one day it worked and the next day it didn't. This looks like normal wear. So I'm thinking this hasn't been changed, let's say 50 years maybe. When you have to remove a cross member to get to the intake screen, not many people are going to clean that. There was a little guard piece inside here that made the oil flow only one direction. That actually was just in by compression. All you do is squeeze a little bit and it popped right out. So now, what I'm doing, I'm taking compressed air and I'm going inside the filter so that way you don't blow the stuff into it, you blow the stuff out of it. think we're ready to pop this thing back in. Now we lost most all the fluid, so I got my drain pan out of here. Let's see. Let's sneak that thing back in. I've got the filter in place. I still need to tighten it down, but I'm going to see if I bent this cross member. I have enough room to let this down, and hopefully it just springs back into place. Cross member went pretty much back in place. Enough I can get the bolts on it. Tighten these down, then it's time to find some fluid to add. I'm about to add fluid to this, but my funnel's full of dirt. Must have had some oil residue in it and the last dust storm came through. So now I'm cleaning out a funnel. Because, you know, I didn't actually want to get to driving this anytime soon. There we go. Usually shoving a rag all the way through does the trick. Now the rag's stuck. And I can't reach it. Alright, I need tools to get the rag out of the funnel. Okay, I'll be back. Now I'm finally adding oil to the transmission. A lot came out, so I'm just going to pour a lot in. This bucket was only half full. It'll probably take the whole thing. Poured in that whole container of fluid. It actually shows too high, but it's not running yet, so who knows. Also, in the meantime, I managed to misplace my keys. And I figured it'd actually be faster just to hotwire this than to find my keys, so we're just going to do that. Alright, let's see what happens. Spec calls for checking the fluid while it's running and in gear trying to drive away. I think they assume you have a working parking brake. The gauges are showing way below the rated pressure. So we very well have a bad transmission here, but the question is, can it move under its own power like it used to? Because I don't really care if it works well. It's not like I'm climbing any hills. I don't have a whole lot of hills to contend with here. So pretty much if it can move under its own power and level ground, I'm good to go. I expect it's actually a worn out transmission, but is it good enough? I'm going to leave the camera on these gauges while I drive, and let's see what it does. This is the biggest hill I have in the yard. It goes up about 6 inches in 10 feet or so. Let's test the hill climbing ability. That's a win right there. I'm going to take a look at the video on those two pressure gauges. I haven't looked at it yet. Went back and watched the video of these gauges, and it was like 20 psi at idle, and then when I was driving it went up to about 40. That worries me a little bit. It makes me think I might have a bad pump. There's one more thing to check.
Now we've determined that the pressure at these two lines is low. And basically that means these are slipping, but why? So we have valves to go. There's that inching valve. We've got pressure regulators, and then the pump. So what we need to do is know what's coming out of this pump. Is that pressure right there enough? So I'm going to add a gauge over here.
This port is straight pump pressure before the inching valve or any other valves. We should know what the pump's putting out right there. And this hex is rounded off, so I can't take this plug out easy. Wonder if I can make a metric size fit. Nope, no luck. Now creating a new size in between metric and standard, the taper Allen head. Should fit there somewhere with a big enough hammer. I have the wrong size Allen socket. I have an adapter from 1/4 to 3/8 and another 3/8 to a 1/2 inch to an impact driver. So I think I'm using everything properly here. Why is this not working? This clearly is the way these tools should be operated. Half-inch drive impact on a 1/4 inch socket. I don't see why there'd be any problem with that. Oh, hey, it worked. Now, we'll see what we got. Now I'm noticing 40 at idle, then up to like 100. Now on the transmission, we had 20 at idle, and I don't know, went up to 40, which means we're losing pressure. We've got to look into that inching valve because that might be the issue. This is actually a hydraulic powered system, basically like a brake master cylinder. You've got a pedal here, and you press the pedal. This one doesn't seem to actually do anything, but when you press the pedal, it pressurizes this cylinder. That master cylinder feeds this line right here, and that pushes a piston inside here to give you the reduced pressure. So obviously this doesn't work. This master cylinder is solid, but if there's pressure in that line holding that valve open, that might be causing a problem. So what we're going to do is relieve that pressure. And this up top here kind of looks like a bleeder or something I can take off and relieve the pressure. Since this is off, all the pressure that was in there should be relieved. And nothing came out. And might do some driving. Maybe just driving it now that we have more pressure at the pump will free everything up.
looks like we know what's going on. The biggest problem was the fluid going into the pump. Now that has been dirty for a long time, which means this pump has been starving for oil for years and probably is completely worn out. Now we also are losing fluid out of something here, maybe everything. Possibly this is stuck, maybe it's going out this relief, but basically any little bit of pressure we have is barely making it to this valve here. It could even be this valve that's leaking, but luckily there's just a little bit of fluid getting to the clutches, enough to make it work for what I need to do. And the big thing is that right there is available. Not only is that really expensive, it's right here, directly driven off the torque converter, which is right there. So all this stuff here has to be removed to get to that pump. And I'm just going to say no to that. Not for something that works well enough for everything I want to do.
Well, that's it. It drives. It's actually better than it ever was. It always had trouble even moving across level ground rolling. Now I could drop the forks and just slide them right along, and it goes pretty good. It gets anything I need to do around here done, and that's all I need. Now the only new stuff I used was the oil, and that was it. So that was a pretty cheap project, and that makes it a double win. Hope you guys are having fun with your projects. I'm calling this one done, and I'm moving on to a different one for next video. So we'll see you then. And we're just going to go through. Whoa.